The crystal champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched my sister-in-law Vivienne parade my daughter around the garden party like a prized show pony. And Eva's already been accepted to 3 Ivy League schools, she announced to anyone who would listen, her voice carrying across the manicured lawn. We're so proud, aren't we, darling? My name is Lena, and I used to be somebody in this family before my husband's death turned me into a ghost. Mom, did you hear? Yale's definitely interested. Eva bounced over, her eyes sparkling with the same excitement I used to see when she'd show me her artwork as a child. But now that sparkle wasn't for me, it was all for Vivian. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I reached out to hug her, but she was already turning away, drawn back into Vivian's orbit like a magnetic force I couldn't fight. Lena, dear, you're looking comfortable today, Vivian said, eyeing my simple blue dress. Though I suppose on a teacher's pension, one has to make do. She smoothed her own designer outfit, a knowing smile playing at her lips. Some of us prefer substance over show, Vivian. I kept my voice steady, even as my fingers tightened around the stem of my glass. Oh, but show is everything in our circles. She looped her arm through Eva's. Isn't that right, precious? Speaking of which, we simply must introduce you to Warren's son, Aiden. He's just returned from his semester in Monaco. I watched them glide away across the lawn, my daughter giggling at whatever poison Vivian was whispering in her ear. Around me, the party continued its elaborate dance, crystal tinkling, fake laughter, and the constant hum of money talking to money. You're looking murderous, hun. Rosalind, my best friend and fellow former teacher, appeared at my elbow with a fresh glass of champagne. Here, you need this more than I do. She's turning my own daughter against me, Roz. I accepted the glass, taking a long sip. Everything I say, everything I do, Vivian twists it into proof that I don't belong in this world anymore. Then maybe it's time to fight back, Rosalind suggested, watching as Vivian introduced Eva to a handsome young man I assumed was Aiden. You still have cards to play. More than she knows. I set down my glass, straightening my shoulders. Robert may have left me out of the business, but he didn't leave me powerless. Across the garden, I caught Vivian's eye. She was watching me, that same smug smile in place, as Eva laughed at something Aiden said. I raised my glass in a mock toast, and for just a moment, let my mask slip. Enjoy the high life for now, Vivian, I whispered, too softly for anyone but Rosalind to hear. Lena, Rosalind touched my arm. What are you planning? Before I could answer, Freddie, Vivian's husband, and my late husband's brother, approached us, looking uncomfortable in his tailored suit. Lena, could we have a word? I nodded, following him to a quieter corner of the garden. What is it, Freddie? Look, I know Vivian can be difficult. He ran a hand through his graying hair. But she means well. She just wants what's best for Eva. What's best for Eva, or what's best for Vivian's social climbing? I challenged him. When was the last time you saw my daughter pick up a paintbrush or laugh without checking to see if the right people were watching? Freddie shifted uncomfortably. Times change. People change. Eva's growing up. Into what? I watched as Vivian orchestrated a photo opportunity, positioning Eva between Aiden and his father Warren. A puppet, another society wife who measures her worth in thread count and country club memberships. You're being unfair, Freddie protested. But I could see the doubt in his eyes. Am I? Then why did Robert make me executor of Eva's trust instead of you and Vivian? I met his gaze steadily. He knew what would happen if the money came before the meaning. Freddie's face paled slightly. What are you saying? I'm saying enjoy the party, brother-in-law. I patted his arm and turned away, catching Vivian's suspicious glance in my direction. And tell your wife she might want to be a little nicer to the ghost in the family. Some of us have more substance than she thinks. As I walked away, I heard Eva's laughter floating across the garden, that practiced perfect sound that had replaced her real joy. But soon she would understand, soon they all would, because Robert hadn't just left me his money, he'd left me his wisdom. And the will I'd been quietly preparing would ensure our daughter learned the lesson Vivian never could. That true worth isn't measured in dollars and cents, but in the depth of your character and the strength of your convictions. I just hoped Eva would forgive me for what came next. Mom, look what I painted. Eva's voice echoed in my memory as I stood in her old art room, my fingers trailing over dusty canvases stacked against the wall. The space still smelled of acrylics and possibility, though no one had touched a brush here in over 2 years. You're torturing yourself again, Rosalind said from the doorway. She'd come over to help me sort through some of Robert's old papers, but found me here instead. Look at this one. I pulled out a canvas, a riot of colors, depicting our old family beach house. She painted this the summer before Robert died, before Vivian decided art wasn't sophisticated enough for a girl of Eva's standing. I remember when she won that youth art competition, Rosalind said, stepping into the room. Vivian actually showed up for that one. Yes, and spent the whole time telling everyone how Eva was just exploring her creative phase before focusing on more suitable pursuits. I set the painting down carefully. That was the beginning of the end. The doorbell rang, interrupting my brooding. Through the security camera feed on my phone, I saw Martina waiting on the front step, clutching her usual folder of community project documents. Come in, I called, meeting her in the foyer. Sorry about the mess, we're doing some organizing. No problem, Mrs. H. Martina's enthusiasm was infectious as always. I brought the final proposals for the youth center renovation. The kids have some amazing ideas. We spread the documents across the kitchen island, and I felt the familiar surge of purpose that came with our community work. This was what Robert and I had always planned, using our resources to make real change, not just throwing money at charity galas. Mom? Eva's voice startled us all. She stood in the kitchen doorway, looking polished and perfect in her designer outfit. I thought we had lunch plans. My heart sank. That was yesterday, sweetheart. You canceled, remember? Vivian had tickets to that fashion show. Oh, right. She shifted uncomfortably, eyeing Martina and the papers. What's all this? The youth center project, I explained, hoping to spark her interest. Remember how you used to help with the art programs there? That was ages ago, Eva dismissed. But I caught her glancing at the drawings some of the kids had submitted. Anyway, I came to get my pearl earrings. Aiden's taking me to dinner at LeBlanc. They're in your old jewelry box, I said. Ava, why don't you stay for a bit? Martina could use some input on the art room design. I can't. Vivian's taking me shopping first. She says presentation is everything at LeBlanc. Ava turned to leave, then paused. Oh, by the way, Aunt Vivian mentioned something about the trust fund. She said you're being difficult about releasing funds for my gap year travels. My blood ran cold. So that's what this surprise visit was really about. Your trust fund isn't a blank check, Ava. Your father set specific conditions. Conditions that you're in charge of. She cut in, sounding exactly like Vivienne. Aunt Vivienne says you're just bitter because you never fit into Dad's world. Ava, Rosalind exclaimed, but I held up a hand to stop her. Is that what you think? I asked quietly. That I'm bitter about not fitting into Dad's world? The world I shared with him for 20 years while building everything you take for granted. Eva had the grace to look uncomfortable. I didn't mean your father's world wasn't about designer labels and society parties. I continued. It was about making a difference, about using privilege responsibly. Maybe you should ask Vivienne how many youth centers she's helped build, or how many scholarship programs she's funded. That's not fair, Eva protested. Aunt Vivian does lots of charity work. She's on 3 benefit committees. Planning parties isn't the same as doing the work, sweetie. I softened my tone. Stay. Help us with this. Remember how much you loved working with the kids? For a moment, I saw a flicker of my old Eva, the one who spent summers teaching art to underprivileged children, who cried at fundraiser videos, who wanted to change the world with her paintbrush. Then her phone buzzed. Vivian's name flashed on the screen. I have to go, she said, already backing away. The earrings. Top drawer, left side, I said wearily. Have fun at dinner. After she left, Martina cleared her throat. She seems different from what you've described. She is different, Rosalind said, squeezing my shoulder. But not for long, right? I nodded, pulling out my phone to text my lawyer. Time to move up the timeline. Vivian's making her move for the trust fund. What are you going to do? Rosalind asked. I looked at the youth center plans, at the dreams and hopes scattered across my kitchen island. I'm going to save my daughter, even if she hates me for it. Because sometimes love means being the villain in someone else's story, at least until they're ready to see the truth. Are you absolutely certain about these terms? Lena, my lawyer, David, peered at me over his reading glasses. They're rather unconventional. Robert was unconventional, I replied, watching rain streak down the office windows. He believed money without purpose corrupts. These terms honor that belief. Vivian won't like it. David shuffled the papers, making Eva's full inheritance conditional on community service, education requirements, and a year of independent living. She'll fight this. Let her. Everything here is legal and aligned with Robert's original wishes. I signed the final document. My daughter needs to understand where she comes from before she can know where she's going. Later that afternoon, I drove to the family estate where Robert's mother, Jacqueline, still lived. The imposing gates opened automatically. At least, I hadn't been stripped of that privilege yet. The housekeeper led me to the conservatory, where Jacqueline sat reading, surrounded by her beloved orchids. She barely looked up as I entered. Twice in 1 month, she remarked dryly. To what do I owe the pleasure? You know why I'm here. I took the seat across from her. Eva's changing, and not for the better. Vivian's influence is none of my concern. Jacqueline turned a page. The girl's 18. Let her make her own choices. Like you let Vivian make her choices when she convinced Robert to restructure the company board? Right before he died. The words hung in the air like smoke. That got her attention. Jacqueline's head snapped up, her eyes sharp. Careful, Lena. No, you be careful. I leaned forward. Your granddaughter is turning into exactly the kind of person Robert worried about. All surface, no substance. And you're sitting here with your orchids, pretending not to see it. What exactly do you expect me to do? Jacqueline's voice held a hint of defensiveness. Eva admires Vivian. She's young, attracted to that lifestyle. She's lost, I interrupted, and her grandmother, the family matriarch, could help guide her back if she cared enough to try. Before Jacqueline could respond, voices drifted in from the hallway. Ava's laugh, followed by Vivienne's distinctive tone. They appeared in the doorway, dressed for tennis. Grandmother, Eva stopped short at the sight of me. Mom, what are you doing here? Just visiting, I said, standing. I was actually hoping to catch you. Are you free for dinner tomorrow? Just us. Eva glanced at Vivienne, who spoke before she could answer. Oh, darling, remember, we have the charity gala tomorrow. The one where you're being introduced to the hospital board? Right. Sorry, Mom. Eva didn't look particularly sorry. Maybe next week? The hospital board? I raised an eyebrow. I didn't realize you were interested in healthcare administration. Well, someone needs to carry on Robert's legacy there. Vivian cut in smoothly. And Eva has such natural leadership qualities, don't you, precious? I watched my daughter beam at the praise, and something inside me cracked. Robert's legacy? You mean the hospital wing he funded for pediatric cancer research? The one inspired by his work with actual sick children, not cocktail parties. Mom, please don't start. Ava's face flushed. This is important to me. Is it? Or is it important to Vivian? I challenged. When was the last time you visited the children's ward, talked to a patient, or are you just there to pose for photos? That's enough. Vivian stepped forward, placing herself between Eva and me. You're embarrassing yourself, Lena. Eva's growing into her role in society. Just because you never could. I chose not to. I corrected her. There's a difference. Grandmother, please tell Mom she's being ridiculous. Eva appealed to Jacqueline, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. The old woman looked between us, then returned to her book. I believe I'll stay out of this. Fine. Eva grabbed her tennis bag. Come on, Aunt Vivienne. We'll be late for our court time. And Mom? Don't bother with dinner invites for a while. I'm going to be very busy. They swept out, leaving me alone with Jacqueline and her orchids. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. You'll lose her if you push too hard, Jacqueline finally said, not looking up. I'm already losing her. I moved to the door, then paused. You know what Robert would say about all this? Robert's not here. Jacqueline's voice was tired. And the living must make their own choices. Yes, I agreed. They must, and I've made mine. Walking to my car, I texted David. Proceed with the will filing. It's time. My phone buzzed immediately with his response. Are you sure? Once this starts. I watched through the conservatory windows as Vivian and Eva crossed the tennis courts, their laughter carrying across the manicured grounds. My daughter, so beautiful, so lost, playing a game she didn't even realize she was losing. Yes, I typed back, I'm sure. Because sometimes the kindest cut is the deepest, and the truest love knows when to let the storm come. The anonymous letter arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between bills and junk mail. No return address, just my name in careful block letters. Inside, a single typed page. Mrs. Harper, Vivienne is planning to contest the trust fund terms. She's already contacted 3 lawyers. Watch your back. A friend. Well, that's ominous, Rosalind said, reading over my shoulder at my kitchen counter. Any idea who sent it? Could be anyone from the family lawyer's office to the household staff. I folded the letter carefully, but they're right. Vivian's been too quiet lately. So what's the plan? Rosalind pulled out her phone. I can still get us into tonight's charity dinner. My cousin's on the committee. Perfect, I smiled. Time to do some reconnaissance. The ballroom of the Grand Hotel sparkled with crystal and old money. I wore my best dress, a classic black number that helped me blend into the background. Rosalind and I separated, working the room from different angles. Did you hear about the trust fund drama? I overheard one society wife whisper to another. Vivian says Lena's gone power mad, trying to control Eva's future. Shocking, her friend replied. After everything Vivian's done for that girl, I gritted my teeth and moved on, catching snippets of similar conversations. Vivian had been busy, spinning her web of sympathy through the social circles. Mom? Eva's voice startled me. She stood with Aiden, both dressed impeccably. I didn't know you were coming tonight. Last-minute decision, I said lightly. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Thanks. She shifted uncomfortably. Aunt Vivienne mentioned something about the trust fund. Did she? I kept my voice neutral. And what exactly did she mention? Just that you're being difficult. Eva wouldn't meet my eyes. That you're trying to control my life with Dad's money. Is that what you think? I asked quietly. Before she could answer, Vivian materialized beside them. Eva, darling, the hospital board members are asking for you. Aiden, be a dear and escort her? Once they left, Vivian's smile turned cold. Crashing parties now, Lena. How desperate. Just supporting the cause, I replied. Though I noticed the donation cards don't mention actual amounts. Trying to hide your creative accounting. Vivian's eyes narrowed. I don't know what you think you're implying. Ladies, Freddie appeared, looking flustered. There you are, Vivian. Warren's looking for you. Something about the summer house arrangements. After she left, Freddie grabbed my arm. We need to talk. Now. He led me to a quiet alcove, off the main ballroom. Look, I know what Vivian's planning with the trust fund. She's been meeting with lawyers behind my back. And you're telling me this why? Because it's wrong. He ran a hand through his hair. Robert wanted Eva to learn responsibility, not become another trust fund brat. She's changed. Everything's about appearances now, money, status. Finally noticed, did you? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. I should have stepped in sooner, he admitted. But you should know, she's planning something big. Tonight, she's going to. A commotion from the ballroom cut him off. We hurried back to find Vivienne at the podium, Eva beside her. And so, Vivienne was saying into the microphone, we're thrilled to announce that Eva will be taking over as chair of the hospital's youth outreach program, following in her father's footsteps, but with her own modern vision. The crowd applauded. Eva beamed. I felt sick. Of course, Vivienne continued, her eyes finding me in the crowd. Some people think the old ways are best. That money should come with strings attached. But we believe in empowering our next generation to forge their own paths. More applause, more knowing looks in my direction. That manipulative witch, Rosalind whispered, appearing beside me. She's using your own cause against you. She's also embezzling from the hospital foundation, Freddie said quietly. I found the proof last week. That's what I was trying to tell you. I watched Eva on stage, glowing under the attention, under Vivienne's false praise. My daughter, being used as a pawn in a game she didn't even understand. Freddie, I said carefully, how would you like to help me save your niece? What do you need? Those embezzlement records, for starters. I met his eyes. And your testimony about Vivienne's plans for the trust fund. He hesitated only briefly. Done. But Lena, make it count, make it hurt. Oh, it will. I watched Vivienne pose for photos with Eva, both of them radiant with false victory. By the time I'm done, she'll wish she'd never heard the name Harper. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with receipts, witnesses, and perfect timing. And my timing was about to become very perfect indeed. Your mother's not answering her phone. Vivienne's irritated voice echoed through the youth center hallway. I froze, then quickly ducked into the art supply room. Eva wasn't supposed to be here today. She's probably busy, Eva replied. Their footsteps getting closer. I don't know why we need to check on the youth center anyway. The board handles everything. Because, darling, we need to document all of Lena's activities for the lawyers. I held my breath as they passed the supply room. Through the crack in the door, I could see Eva's uncertain expression. Martina, Vivienne called out. Is anyone here? Hi. Martina emerged from her office, clipboard in hand. Can I help you? Eva is here to inspect the facility, Vivienne announced. As the new youth outreach chair, she needs to understand the operation. Martina's eyes flickered to the supply room. She knew I was here, preparing for tomorrow's art therapy session. Of course, though you just missed the most inspiring part of our day. The kids finished their mural project. How quaint. Vivienne's voice dripped condescension. Eva, darling, make some notes. We'll need to modernize all this. Perhaps a digital arts program instead. Actually, Martina said, this program was designed by Eva herself 3 years ago. Remember, Eva, you taught that first summer workshop. The silence that followed felt heavy with memory. Yeah, Eva said softly. We painted butterflies with the cancer patients. They still talk about that, Martina continued. In fact, Sarah, you remember Sarah? She's in remission now, and she's teaching her own art classes here. Sarah made it. Eva's voice cracked slightly. She was so sick. Oh, please, Vivienne interrupted. That's all very touching. But we're here to evaluate, not reminisce. Now, about the budget. A child's laughter interrupted her, followed by the sound of running feet. A small girl in a bright yellow dress burst into the hallway, clutching a painting. Miss Martina, look what Oh, the girl stopped short at the sight of strangers. Hello, Lucy, Martina smiled. Show us what you made. Lucy held up her painting proudly. It was a butterfly painted in brilliant blues and purples. I did it just like in the pictures, Lucy announced. The ones from Miss Eva's class. Miss Martina said you used to teach here, she added, looking at Eva with wide eyes. I watched through the crack as my daughter knelt down to Lucy's level. Something soft and real, breaking through her polished exterior. That's beautiful, Eva said. You know, butterflies were my favorite thing to paint too. Really? Will you show me how to do the sparkly wings? Miss Martina tried, but she said you were better at it. Ava, Vivian cut in sharply. We have that lunch appointment. Ava looked torn, glancing between Lucy's hopeful face and Vivian's stern one. The budget reports, Vivian pressed. The lawyers are waiting. Eva stood slowly, her shoulders stiffening. Sorry, Lucy, maybe another time, but you promised to teach art classes again, Lucy protested. It's on the wall. She pointed to a framed newspaper article I knew well. Ava's smiling face, surrounded by young cancer patients, promising to return every summer to teach art. Things change, sweetie, Vivian said smoothly. Ava has more important responsibilities now. Come along, darling. They turned to leave, but Lucy called out one last time. Your mom still teaches us, you know. She says art helps heal our hearts. Eva stopped dead. My mom. She teaches here. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Martina confirmed. She took over your classes after you stopped coming. I didn't. Eva turned to Vivienne. You told me the program was shut down, that they didn't want art classes anymore. I was protecting you, Vivienne said quickly. These people, this place, it's all beneath you now. You have real opportunities. Real opportunities. Martina's voice was quiet but firm. Like what? Planning parties while your mother actually helps kids heal? You know, Eva, she still hangs every butterfly painting in the cancer ward, just like you used to. I could see the conflict on Eva's face, the crack in her carefully constructed world. But before she could respond, Vivian grabbed her arm. We're leaving, now. She practically dragged Eva toward the exit, and we'll be discussing the future of this facility's funding very soon. After they left, I finally emerged from the supply room. Lucy looked up at me with worried eyes. Did I say something wrong, Miss Lena? I knelt and hugged her tight. No, sweetheart, you said everything exactly right. Martina touched my shoulder. She remembered, Lena. Did you see her face when Lucy showed the butterfly? I nodded, hope blooming in my chest like one of Lucy's painted wings, because for just a moment I'd seen my real daughter again, the one who believed in healing hearts through art, not social climbing through charity galas. The crack was there. Now I just had to make it wide enough for the truth to shine through. Sign here, Eva. Warren pushed the legal document across his mahogany desk. It's a simple petition to remove your mother as trustee. I watched through the glass wall of the conference room, my heart pounding. After Freddie's tip, I'd arrived at Warren's law office just in time. I don't know. Eva hesitated, pen hovering above the paper. Shouldn't we wait until after the will reading tomorrow? Absolutely not, Vivian snapped. Your mother's planning something. We need to act now. I chose that moment to walk in. You're right about one thing, Vivian. I am planning something. This is a private meeting, Warren said, smoothly, trying to slide the papers into a folder. Nothing about my daughter's future is private to me. I placed my own folder on the desk. Ava, before you sign anything, there's something you need to see. Don't, Vivian warned. She's trying to manipulate you, like you've been manipulating her. I pulled out a document. Ava, do you know what your father's original vision was for your trust? Eva glanced at Vivian, then back at me. He wanted me to have security. He wanted you to have purpose, I corrected, which is why he left this letter. I handed Eva an envelope, sealed with Robert's personal stamp. Her hands trembled as she opened it. My dearest Ava, she read aloud. If you're reading this, you're about to make a choice that will define your future. Money can be a bridge to dreams or a barrier to growth. That's why I've arranged something special for you. A chance to see the world as I did when I was young. She looked up, confused. What does he mean? Your father spent a year working with humanitarian projects before starting his business, I explained. It shaped everything he became. He arranged the same opportunity for you. What? Vivian snatched the letter. This is ridiculous. Eva has commitments here, the hospital board, her social obligations. A year of real work, I continued, ignoring Vivian. With real people. teaching art, therapy, in underprivileged communities, just like you used to dream about. Stop this, Warren interrupted. Ava, sign the petition. We can contest this manipulation. But Eva was staring at another photo that had fallen from the envelope. Her father in worn jeans and a t-shirt, surrounded by smiling children, paintbrushes in hand. Dad did this, she whispered. It's where he learned what truly mattered, I said softly. Where he decided to use his wealth for something bigger than status. Don't listen to her, Vivienne pleaded. Think about Aiden, your future, everything we've planned. You mean everything you've planned? Eva's voice had an edge I hadn't heard in years. Did you know about Dad's work? About any of this? Vivienne's silence was answer enough. The choice is yours, I said. Sign Warren's petition, take control of the trust, live the life Vivienne's designed for you, or honor your father's wishes, travel, teach, create, make your own mark on the world. She's 18, Warren protested. She can't possibly. I'll do it, Eva interrupted. We all stared at her. Dad's project. I want to do it. Eva, no. Vivienne grabbed her arm. Think about what you're giving up. I'm thinking about Lucy, Eva said quietly. And Sarah. And all the kids I abandoned because you told me I was meant for better things. What's better than helping people heal through art? That's what Dad did, isn't it, Mom? I nodded, throat tight with emotion. This is insane, Warren blustered. Vivienne, do something. But Eva was already ripping up the petition. I'm done letting you plan my life, Aunt Vivienne. I want to make Dad proud. I want to make myself proud. You'll regret this, Vivienne hissed. When you're stuck in some third world dump while your friends enjoy luxury. The only thing I regret, Eva cut her off, is letting you convince me that luxury matters more than legacy. She turned to me, and for the first time in years, I saw my daughter, really saw her. When do we start? The will reading is tomorrow, I said. Everything will be explained then. Are you sure about this? Eva picked up her father's photo again, tracing his smile with her finger. Yes, I think I finally understand what he was trying to teach me, what you've been trying to teach me. This isn't over, Vivienne snapped, gathering her designer bag. Warren, we'll contest everything, the will, the trust, all of it. Good luck, I smiled. Robert's wishes are quite clear, and now, so are Eva's. After they stormed out, Eva turned to me, tears in her eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry for everything. Don't be sorry. I hugged her close. Be ready. Tomorrow changes everything. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about rebuilding what they tried to tear down, one brush stroke at a time. The family lawyer's office felt too small for the tension it contained. Vivienne sat with her legal team, shooting daggers at me across the conference table. Eva sat between us, back straight, hands folded. Freddie, Jacqueline, and various other family members lined the walls. David cleared his throat. Before we begin the formal reading, there's evidence of financial misconduct that must be addressed. Objection, Warren started, but David held up a hand. This isn't a courtroom, Warren. And you might want to hear this before you speak. He slid a folder across the table. Bank records showing systematic embezzlement from the hospital foundation. Care to explain? Vivienne. The color drained from her face. This is absurd. I demand. I can confirm these records. Freddie spoke up, his voice steady. I found them last week. Money meant for the children's ward, redirected to personal accounts. Vivienne whirled on him. You snake? After everything I've done for you. For me. Freddie laughed bitterly. You mean like maxing out our credit cards? Mortgaging the house without telling me? It's over, Vivienne. I've already spoken to the hospital board. If we could proceed, David interrupted, opening Robert's will. The terms are quite specific. Eva squeezed my hand as David began to read. The room grew quieter with each revelation. The bulk of the estate is to be held in trust, managed by Lena, with the following conditions for Eva's inheritance. 1 year of humanitarian work through the Robert Harper Foundation, followed by completion of a degree in either social work, education, or arts therapy. This is ridiculous, Vivian burst out. She's being forced into poverty work. I'm being given a chance to make a difference, Eva corrected her. Like Dad did. David continued. Furthermore, any attempt to contest these terms or manipulate their execution will result in the entire trust being redirected to establish art therapy programs in children's hospitals worldwide. Warren slumped in his chair. Vivienne's lawyers started whispering urgently. There's more, David added. Regarding the hospital foundation. He looked directly at Vivienne. Any board member found misappropriating funds will be permanently barred from involvement, and their actions will be reported to the proper authorities. You can't prove anything, Vivienne hissed, but her hands were shaking. Actually, Freddie pulled out his phone. I recorded our conversation from last week, the one where you explained exactly how you've been moving the money around. Would you like to hear it? The room erupted in chaos. Vivian's lawyers huddled around her. Warren tried to intervene, and several family members started arguing loudly. Quiet, Jacqueline's voice cut through the noise. She stood slowly, commanding attention as only a family matriarch could. I've heard enough. Vivian, you're done here. Get out. Mother, please. I said get out, and expect a call from the hospital board's ethics committee. Jacqueline turned to Ava. As for you, my dear, your father would be proud of your decision. Eva's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? Jacqueline smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from her in years. In fact, I have something for you. She pulled out an old, worn sketchbook. Your father's journal from his humanitarian year. I've been saving it for the right moment. As Eva clutched the journal, Vivian made one last desperate play. Ava, think about what you're giving up. The parties, the connections, your future with Aiden. My future is my own. Eva stood, voice firm, and I choose to build it on something real. Then you're as foolish as your mother, Vivian spat, gathering her things. Good luck saving the world with paintbrushes and poverty tours. Better than stealing from sick children, I replied calmly. The police will be very interested in those bank records, by the way. Vivian stormed out, Warren trailing behind her. The room gradually emptied until only Eva, Jacqueline, and I remained. I should have stepped in sooner, Jacqueline said quietly. Watched more closely, protected what Robert built. We all should have done many things, I replied. But we're doing them now. Eva opened her father's journal, gasping at a butterfly sketch on the first page. Dad drew these too. Every day, Jacqueline smiled. He said art was the universal language of hope. When do I leave? Eva asked, looking up at me. For the humanitarian project. 2 weeks, I said. Unless you want more time to… No, she interrupted. I've wasted enough time trying to be someone else. She hugged the journal close. I want to be me again. As we left the office, I saw Rosalind waiting in the lobby. She took one look at our faces and broke into a huge smile. Time to restart those art classes? She asked Eva. Time to restart everything, Eva replied. And for the first time in years, her smile reached her eyes. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying what's wrong, but in rebuilding what's right, one brave choice at a time. Hold still, Lucy, Eva laughed, adjusting the little girl's smock. The paint goes on the canvas, not in your hair. I watched from the doorway of the youth center's art room as my daughter led her class through their butterfly project. The walls were covered in vibrant wings, each one unique, each one healing someone's heart. Miss Eva, look, Lucy held up her painting proudly. I made it sparkly, just like you showed me. It's beautiful, Eva beamed. Want to hang it in the cancer ward with the others. The door behind me opened, and Martina entered with a stack of papers. The police just called. They're filing formal charges against Vivian tomorrow. How much did she take? I asked quietly, not wanting to disturb the class. Over 2 million. All meant for the children's medical equipment. Martina shook her head. Freddie's testimony sealed it. She's facing serious time. A small commotion drew our attention back to the art room. Aiden stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. "Eva," he called out, "can we talk?" Eva wiped paint from her hands. "I'm teaching Aiden. These kids are more important than whatever party invitation you're here to deliver." "It's not that." He shifted nervously. "Dad's really sorry about everything. About backing Vivian, about the trust fund fight. He wants to make a donation to the program." "Tell him thank you," Ava replied firmly. "But we don't need his money. What these kids need is time, attention, and genuine care. If he wants to help, he can volunteer, like I do, like Mom does. I could, maybe." Aiden looked around at the children painting. "I used to draw, before Dad said it wasn't practical." Eva's expression softened slightly. "We teach adult classes on Thursdays, if you're interested in finding yourself again." The moment was interrupted by Jacqueline's arrival. She carried a large canvas, covered in cloth. "Grandmother." Eva helped her with the package. "What's this?" "Something your father painted during his humanitarian year." Jacqueline removed the cloth, revealing a stunning mural of butterflies rising from a city in ruins. He called it, "Hope Takes Flight." The children gathered around, oohing and ahhing at the artwork. Eva traced the signature with trembling fingers. She looked at me. "I thought Dad was just a businessman." "He was everything," I said softly. "That's what he wanted for you, not to choose between worlds, but to bridge them." "Miss Eva," Lucy tugged at her sleeve, "can we paint something big like that? For the hospital?" "Actually," Martina stepped forward, "we just got approval to paint a mural in the children's ward. If you're interested in leading the project." Eva's eyes lit up. "Really? But what about my trip? I leave for Guatemala next week." "The mural can wait," I assured her. "Your journey comes first." "About that," Aiden spoke up, "I've been thinking. The trip your dad planned, helping people through art, it sounds more meaningful than another year of business school. Maybe I could join you." Eva studied him thoughtfully. "It won't be luxury hotels and cocktail parties." "Good," he replied. "I'm tired of those anyway." A small hand slipped into mine, and I looked down to find Lucy watching the exchange. "Is Miss Eva leaving us?" she asked worriedly. "Just for a little while, sweetheart." I knelt beside her. "She's going to help other children, like her dad did. But she'll come back with new stories, new techniques, and an even bigger heart. Promise." Lucy looked at Eva. Eva joined us, paint-stained and glowing with purpose. "I promise. And when I come back, we'll paint the biggest, brightest butterflies this hospital has ever seen." Speaking of butterflies, Jacqueline pulled out an envelope. "I found these in Robert's things, photos from his first art therapy class in Guatemala." As Eva and the children crowded around to see, I stepped back and watched my daughter, my real daughter, shine in the life she was meant to live. Rosalind appeared beside me. "You did it, Lena. You got her back." "No," I corrected her, watching Eva show Lucy how to hold a brush like her father did in the photos. She found herself. Sometimes love means stepping back and trusting the path, even when others try to block it. "Miss Lena," Lucy called out, "come paint with us. Miss Eva says we're all going to make butterflies for Miss Vivian in jail, to help her heart heal too." I laughed, catching Eva's eye. My daughter smiled, not the polished society smile Vivienne had taught her, but her real radiant, paint-smudged smile. "Coming," I grabbed a smock, because sometimes the best revenge isn't about punishment at all. It's about creating something beautiful from the ashes of what others tried to destroy. And as I joined my daughter at the easel, surrounded by children's laughter and butterflies taking flight, I knew Robert was watching, smiling, proud of the masterpiece our daughter had become.
Has the move been completed yet? The movers will arrive in 3 hours. It's Scott's lover, who is trying to kick Nicole and me out of the house. Mandy stole Scott from me. I used to run a salon from home, and losing this house means I also lose my workplace. She intended to take over my salon. However, Things didn't go smoothly, and ultimately, she will face hardships. I never thought such misfortune would befall me, but at the same time, it's the first time I've been supported by so many people. I feel the importance of having good connections with people more than ever. My name is Kelly Johnson, 45 years old. With my husband Scott Johnson, who is 5 years older, and our middle school daughter, Nicole, makes us a family of 3. We have been married for 15 years. Scott and I met at work, and I quit my job when we got married, but Scott continued working. He has now been promoted to the point where he attends board meetings as an executive director. The reason I quit was not to become a housewife, but to start my own business. I once shared my dream of running a salon with Scott when we started dating. That's a wonderful dream. I want to support you with all my heart. Really? I'm so happy. You're the first to say you'll support me, Scott. I had always been told by family and friends that I shouldn't become an entrepreneur, so his support truly meant a lot to me. Scott actually encouraged me to quit my job and go back to school when we got married. It's a chance to study seriously. Really? Tell the truth, I've wanted to go to school for a long time. I wanted to open a massage salon that supports dieting. This required a substantial knowledge of the body. I discovered I was pregnant right after we got married and attended school while pregnant. On days when I felt unwell, I got to take classes online. With Scott's support, I attended school for 2 years, gave birth to Nicole during this period, and successfully opened the salon at home. Those busy 2 years are vivid in my memory, as if it were yesterday. For Nicole's sake, I worked hard to make the salon successful. This effort paid off, and 3 years later, my schedule was filled with repeat customers. A system where regulars who received maintenance would refer new customers had formed. By the 10th year, the salon had become so popular that it was hard to get a reservation. When the 10th anniversary came, customers and friends celebrated with me. That day, I received a bouquet of flowers from Scott and Nicole and felt truly happy. You've really done well. Thank you. I made it this far because of your support. I appreciated his help and expressed my gratitude to Scott for his support. I have something to tell you. What is it? I've been promoted, and I will become an executive director. I'll be attending board meetings from now on, and it might get busier. That's wonderful. Congratulations. Thank you. At that time, I was confident that our life together would continue to be happy even after Nicole had grown up and left home. However, a few years later, I would discover Scott's betrayal. One day, Mandy Simpson appeared at the salon without notice. She is the daughter of the president of Scott's company. Are you Mrs. Johnson? Yes, that's me. Do you have a reservation? No. I heard about this place from Scotty. Scotty, I am Mandy Simpson. Simpson as in. Mandy looked at me with a smile. No doubt, she was the young lady of the Simpson group. When Scott and I worked at the same company, the president used to bring his elementary school daughter to the office. After graduating from university, Mandy joined the secretarial department through her parents' connections. You're the president's daughter, and yes, I came here today to enjoy some beauty treatments. Really? I'm sorry, but we're fully booked today, and the next availability is in 3 months. I'm really sorry. Upon hearing this, Mandy's expression suddenly darkened. I had a bad feeling, and my heart started pounding. You're turning away a customer who made the effort to come here. I'm sorry. I'm managing this salon alone, so I can only handle one customer at a time. Then you should cancel the current reservation and let me in. That's difficult. It would be rude to the customers who have made reservations. Mandy refused to leave. The next customer was due to arrive soon. I didn't want such a scene to be witnessed at the entrance. I'm sorry you came all the way over, but could you first make a reservation? I also take cancellations if you can't make it by chance. Then Mandy glared at me angrily and said, I won't make a reservation. Who do you think would come to such a dirty salon and left, catching a taxi? I was simply shocked and could only stand there stunned. Compared to a salon that a lady would visit, it might indeed look inferior. But I didn't deserve to be spoken to like that and felt a bit down. However, the events of that day were not over yet. That night, Scott came home with a furious expression. Hey, I heard you turned away the president's daughter today. What? The news has reached you already. I'm the one who referred her, so of course it would. But you should have made it clear that reservations are mandatory. She's the president's daughter, you know. So what? Being the president's daughter doesn't entitle her to special treatment. I couldn't understand why Scott was so angry. Maybe he was concerned about his career. Mandy isn't involved with the company, and the president doesn't seem that strict. Why are you so upset? And something else I'm curious about. Why does she call you by your nickname? That fact bugged me, so I asked. Scott then showed a clear sign of being disturbed. She was at the president's golf tournament. The president calls me by my nickname, so she probably does too. The fact that the president calls Scott by his nickname seemed strange to me, but I still didn't understand why he was angry. Is your promotion that important? Don't you support me? I always supported you. Having the young lady as a client could have boosted your reputation. This salon prioritizes reservations. New customers are important, but regulars are even more so. Hanf. As if a customer who comes once a month would spend much money. At these words, I was at a loss for words. I didn't have the energy to argue further, and I asked Scott to consult me in advance if he intended to make any referrals. I won't make any referrals anymore. Scott was angry, and we didn't speak to each other at home for a while. I couldn't understand why the matter with the president's daughter had to cause so much trouble. We only started talking again when Scott forgot something. A USB was left plugged into the home computer. When I called, he asked me to bring it to the office. I had several appointments that afternoon, so I hurried to the office. My bad. Scott said that, took the USB, and quickly left. I might have hoped for a lunch together, but nothing of the sort happened, and we parted ways quickly. Is that you, Mrs. Johnson? The person who greeted me was a junior colleague who had joined the company when I was still working there. She had become a respectable career woman, which surprised me. Ms. Adams? It's been a while. You seem well settled. Well, I'm a senior now. Time really flies, I thought. I wanted to chat more, but with customers waiting, I said, how about we grab a meal sometime? Here's my contact, and handed her my business card. Thank you. There's something I'd like to discuss, actually. Something you'd like to discuss. Yes, it's a bit difficult to talk about here. She then whispered in my ear, it's about Director Johnson. What? I was concerned about my husband, but we agreed to get in touch later. I felt uneasy. What on earth could it be about? However, a few days later, I witnessed an unbelievable scene. That day, I had gone on a business trip a bit further away. I was visiting a factory to see a prototype of a new lotion for the salon. When I arrived at the station, I saw a familiar car parked. Watching it, I noticed Mandy sitting in the passenger seat. I discreetly observed from a distance. No one was in the driver's seat at first, but soon a man came out of a store and took the seat. It was undoubtedly Scott. He was supposed to be on a one-night golf trip today. I thought maybe it was a competition Mandy was participating in, but something felt off. It was a woman's intuition. Then, in the next moment, Mandy wrapped her arms around Scott's neck and kissed him on the cheek. Scott happily returned the kiss on her lips. They laughed shyly and drove away from the station. I was so shocked that I just collapsed right there. The next day, late at night, Scott came home. "Oh, you're still up. You could have gone to bed. We need to talk." "About what?" "Who did you go on a trip with last night?" "It wasn't golf, was it?" Scott seemed a bit taken aback by the sudden question. "Yesterday, I saw you at the station. You were kissing Mandy in the car." Hearing this, Scott sighed heavily. "Yes, I went on a trip with Mandy." Surprisingly, Scott calmly admitted to the affair, and even more astonishing, said, "Now that it's out, it's easier to talk. I actually plan to wait until next year, but I'm not interested in you at all anymore. I want to marry Mandy soon. Even my mother agrees." I never expected that my mother-in-law had been consulted in advance. For the first time, I realized she was on her son's side. "Are you considering a divorce?" "Yes. I'd be happier coming home to a young wife rather than an older woman like you." Seeing the kiss was shocking enough, but I never expected such a statement. "Let's discuss this with Mandy as well." I managed to say this while desperately trying to maintain my composure. Over the weekend, we invited Mandy over and had a talk. We haven't told Nicole about the situation yet. She might notice that something is off, but being a middle school student, she seems to be considerate and hasn't said anything. We asked Nicole to go out, and the three of us gathered. Scott and Mandy, sitting in front of me, were holding hands. There was no sign of remorse from them. To them, I was just an obstacle now. When did this relationship start? About a year ago, I guess. That long. I hadn't noticed anything over this past year. I remember that Scott got promoted a year ago. When I realized that the late returns home and the weekend outings were all to meet Mandy, anger welled up inside me. After the divorce, I will be taking over the house and the salon. Wait a minute. Even if I leave the house, why should you take the salon too? Well, the salon is attached to the house, isn't it? Are you planning to continue coming here? That's right, but I hadn't thought about not being able to provide services to the local clients anymore. If I leave this house, I have to give up the salon as well. I was so shocked by Scott's affair that I completely forgot about the salon. Even if I have no other choice but to leave, it will be impossible for you to run the salon. I will shut it down. Don't worry, my father will provide financial support, and I will hire staff. I never imagined losing not only Scott but the salon as well. That hurt even more. I want you to sign the divorce papers quickly and leave. I can't wait to live here with Scotty. Yes, I see, but it won't be that simple. Is it a matter of money? I will pay proper compensation. I have the money. That's your parents' money, isn't it? And do you really think your father approves of this? My dad supports everything I do. And with Scotty by my side, there's no problem. Even his mother supports us. I no longer had the energy to delay the divorce. If Scott's decision is this firm, there's no point in clinging to anything. Since I would receive compensation, I decided to proceed with the divorce proceedings quickly and settle everything. However, I was worried about Nicole. Just then, the door burst open, and Nicole entered the room. "Mom, let's leave these people and get out of here. I support you." "Oh, Nicole, not staying with your wonderful father? That's fortunate. I didn't want you to be in my way anyways." Nicole stared intently at Mandy. "What do you like about this old man, old lady?" "Old lady? Ma am? I'm only 23 years old." "Oh, is that so? I thought you were older because of the heavy makeup." Mandy trembled with anger. "What kind of upbringing is this?" "I'm sorry. My daughter is just very honest." Mandy left the room trembling with anger, and Scott hurriedly followed her. I apologized to Nicole. "Nicole, I'm really sorry." "It's not your fault, Mom, and you can open a salon anywhere because of your skills." Encouraged by Nicole's words, I resolved to try hard in a new place. I might not have been able to make such a quick decision if it weren't for Nicole. I didn't want her to have anything to do with that woman. The procedures were carried out swiftly. All matters regarding compensation and child support were arranged through a lawyer. I honestly told my salon clients that I was divorcing and leaving the salon. There were words of encouragement from them, as well as reactions of disappointment and anger. It felt like everything I had built was gradually crumbling. Then the moving day came, and Mandy showed up. "Has the move been completed yet?" "The movers will arrive in 3 hours." "That will take some time. There's no need for you to keep watch." While Nicole and I were packing, Mandy wandered around the salon and spent time intimately with Scott. I tried not to let it bother me. When the movers arrived, we successfully moved all our belongings. "Well, this is goodbye from us. Bye-bye." Mandy, arm in arm with Scott, waved at us. I handed her a thick file containing legal documents for the salon. "This is important documentation for running the salon, so make sure to read it carefully." "I understand." Thus began a new life for Nicole and me alone. Using our savings, we bought a used house and set up part of it as a new salon. I was surprised at how many bookings we received after announcing the opening date. Despite the increased distance, many of my regular customers came to visit. Additionally, acquaintances living near the new store spread good word about the salon, and Nicole actively promoted it on social media. Tears spilled over as I realized how many people were supporting me. A month later, the salon was running smoothly. During that time, I received numerous frantic calls from my husband and his lover on my cell phone, which I continued to ignore. However, they even started calling the salon. Hearing Mandy's voice was exasperating. "Hey you've exposed us, haven't you? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Scott and my father are in trouble right now." It seemed there was trouble at the company. I didn't need to know the details, but just to be sure, I contacted Ms. Adams. "I would like to discuss something important with you. Are you available tonight?" After work, I agreed to meet her. After your divorce, these photos were distributed among the people in the industry. The photos she presented showed Scott and Mandy having a secret meeting inside the company. What is this? Do you remember when I said I had something to discuss with you? This is it. Since it was right after your divorce, I thought it was no longer necessary. But hearing Mandy bragging about how she ousted you made me lose my patience. Scott and Mandy's affair was already widely known within the company. The president, indulgent towards his daughter, did nothing about her actions. So, I decided to leak this fact to the public. As a result, Ms. Adams and several other employees took photos of Scott and Mandy's secret meetings. Scott and Mandy were careless and were easily photographed. But why you? Because you helped me a lot when I was a new graduate. I felt like crying. Also, I was angry at Mandy, who did whatever she wanted after joining through connections, and at Mr. Johnson and the president for overlooking it. Currently, a corporate affair scandal could be a fatal blow. The public's view of infidelity is harsh, and clients tend to distance themselves quickly. But won't you and your colleagues be troubled if the company faces problems? Don't worry. Our company was set to be acquired by a foreign corporation several years ago, and it's possible to request a transfer to the parent company. It seems that the acquisition of the company had already been decided. This issue has devalued the company, and the sale at a very low price is underway. The president only now got furious about the affair. Scott was urged to take responsibility. However, expectations were low that Scott would take any meaningful action, and he eventually declared he would resign to take responsibility and left the company. Afterward, there was constant strife between the unemployed Scott and Mandy. Mandy tried to return to her parents' home, but her mother refused and actually opposed her marriage, saying, "Don't ever come back once you leave." With nowhere to go and her father busy with company issues, Mandy was largely ignored. Eventually, with no means to live on her own, Mandy became dependent on Scott. Then, another problem occurred. The salon was sued. This was because a customer developed skin problems due to the lotion used. Bad rumors spread quickly, and customers left in no time. Mandy, who was not involved in customer service, decided to blame the employees for the problems that occurred. Angry employees left as a result, and new problems arose. Mandy did not have a massage qualification, and the salon had been viable thanks to the employees. She had never looked through the important documents I handed over when I left the house. However, bookings from customers continued to come in. Unaware customers thought I was still running the salon and visited. As a result, many complaints were lodged with the Consumer Consultation Center, and eventually, an audit was conducted on the salon. The salon, which had not followed any operational rules, was forced to close down, and it was unable to refund prepaid vouchers. Mandy's spending was terrible. Having nowhere to go, Mandy visited my salon. "Please help me. I have no one else to turn to." "Why are you asking me for help?" "Because there's no one else." At that moment, customers resting in the waiting room stood up and confronted Mandy. "You have the nerve to show your face here. Just go back where you came from." One by one, the women who were regulars at my salon and had come from far condemned Mandy. Unable to bear it, Mandy fled back home. The salon she managed soon went bankrupt. What remained were the refunds to customers and unpaid wages to employees. As a result, Mandy took out loans to settle these debts. Her parents refused to assist her, and she was forced to borrow from financial institutions. Meanwhile, Scott still had not found a job and, due to his pride as a former director, was picky about employment. "You should work, even if it's just at a store or something, to make some money." "What? There's no way I would do such work. You should work instead." Such arguments continued to be a regular occurrence. Eventually, unable to withstand the pressure of repayment, Mandy started working as a cashier in a supermarket, and Scott began working as a delivery person. But it was still difficult to repay the debts. Mandy eventually went to her parents' house to beg for help. She promised to repay and created a promissory note. A few days later, Nicole suddenly burst into the house as if fleeing. "What's wrong?" "He's chasing me." "Who?" At that moment, Scott appeared, wearing a delivery service uniform. "What are you doing?" Suddenly, he started apologizing at the entrance. I sent Nicole to her room and decided to talk with Scott alone. "Kelly, I was wrong. I want to start over with the three of us as a family. I'm serious. After you left me and Nicole for another woman, why do you think we can start over? I intend to divorce her." "What? It hasn't even been a year since you got married, right?" At that moment, the doorbell rang, and Nicole came downstairs to answer it. "You're here too." The person who boldly walked into the house was Mandy. "I knew you'd be here." "How did you know?" "The delivery service called me. They said they couldn't reach you. What are you doing, skipping work?" "I want to break up with you." "What are you saying?" Seeing the situation worsening, I urged them to leave the house. "I'm not considering remarrying you. We don't want to be involved with you anymore. So please, never come to this house again." "Wait. If either of you comes here again, I'll report you to the police for stalking. I will never come to this house again." Saying that, Mandy took Scott and left. In the end, Mandy was not considering divorcing Scott, and she did not let go of him. I wondered why Mandy so desperately wanted to stay with Scott. 5 years have passed. One day, when I was feeling unwell from a cold and went to the hospital, I saw a nurse pushing a patient in a wheelchair. The patient was a man in pajamas, unmistakably Scott. I was curious about what had happened, but went home without doing anything that day. When I told Nicole about the incident, she said, "I'll look into it." Nicole still had friends nearby our old address who she could contact for information. From her investigation, it was revealed that Scott had a traffic accident while making deliveries and broke his leg. He had been hospitalized with injuries that would take 3 months to heal fully. Meanwhile, Mandy had left Scott during his hospitalization, leaving behind a divorce notice. She had only been holding on to Scott to ensure the repayment of their debts, and once she realized the medical expenses would be an additional burden, she abandoned him. Scott, now free, promptly signed the divorce papers left by Mandy. However, he was later fired from his part-time job, and his solitary hospitalization worsened his mental state, leading to a depression-like condition. Additionally, the reason Mandy abandoned Scott was that she had a new boyfriend. However, her new boyfriend was severely addicted to gambling and had been misusing Mandy's funds. As a result, Mandy was trying to escape from him. With nowhere else to go, Mandy reluctantly continued living with him. She was also mentally exhausted, and her situation was far from good. Neighbors noticed her severe weight loss and gossiped. "That wife has lost a lot of weight recently." Nicole was fed up with hearing about them and told me, "Don't worry about those people anymore." To Nicole, that man was just someone related by blood, not someone she could think of as her father. After graduating from high school, Nicole attended a beauty school for 2 years to become a nail technician, and after graduating, she has been helping at my salon. She has talked about wanting her own salon in the future, and I allowed her to set up a nail space in my shop, which she has made a reality. Though the divorce put many hardships on Nicole, seeing her work hard and stay positive motivates me to do better myself. Recently, Nicole said something that really touched me. "I want to become an independent adult like you." This was truly a joy to hear, the most valuable thing to me. I feel very happy now. Life cannot be measured by money alone. While there are many wealthy people, there are not as many who are rich in spirit. I want to be a person rich in spirit. That's why I cherish my relationships with those around me and live with a sense of gratitude. As Nicole grows, I too want to continue growing. Rebecca Manning, now 28, still experienced a sharp pain in her stomach as the end of the year approached. Sipping her cold coffee, she looked at her smartphone screen. 7 missed calls, all from her mother. Her apartment was small, but it was her own space. After graduating from university, she had just started working as a copywriter at an advertising agency, finally achieving financial independence. The job was busy but fulfilling. Having control over her own time was a luxury that, after years living with her family, seemed priceless. As she hesitated to answer the phone, Rebecca reminisced about past Christmases. They were supposed to be fun gatherings, but for her, they always followed the same pattern. While the adults laughed and shared wine, she was invariably tasked with taking care of her cousins. Over the years, it had become an obligation, a right her family took for granted without considering her feelings. Rebecca put down her coffee cup, took a deep breath, and answered the phone. "You finally picked up," said her mother, Debbie, her voice carrying its usual hint of mild reproach. "I called you several times. I was at work, Mom." In reality, she had noticed the calls after work was already over. She just wanted to delay talking to her mother. "What are your plans for Christmas?" Debbie asked. Her voice had a scheming tone, and Rebecca grew wary. Usual stuff, planning to go to the family home like always. "Well, this year is going to be a bit different." "What do you mean?" Rebecca frowned. "Aunt Sandra has come up with a wonderful idea. All of us adults are going on a Caribbean cruise from Christmas to New Year's Day." "Isn't that great?" While she said all of us, it was clear Rebecca was not included. "Me too?" She checked. "Oh, about that." Debbie hesitated. "You have a different important role." Rebecca's stomach tightened further. "What role?" "Taking care of Nicole, Chris, and Alex. They're still too young for a cruise." "Wait, so you want me to look after an 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 4-year-old for a whole week while everyone else sunbathes and sips cocktails in the Caribbean?" "Don't put it like that. You get along well with the kids, and you don't have plans for Christmas anyway, right? Plus, you don't have your own kids, so this will be a good experience for you." Rebecca felt a shiver of anger. "Mom, I have my own life. I have plans with friends and work deadlines. But it's for the family. Besides, the tickets are already bought. They're non-refundable." Rebecca fought the urge to hang up, maintaining her composure. "When were you planning to consult me? Or did you assume I'd just agree? Of course I didn't think you'd say no. You've always been a good girl, always doing everything for the family. Mom, I'm not a child anymore." Rebecca spoke calmly. "I have the right to control my own time. I'm saying no." There was a pause on the other end. "Rebecca, don't just think about yourself. This is supposed to be a special vacation for the whole family." "Except for me," Rebecca retorted. "I can't believe your selfishness is ruining everyone's fun plans." "Selfish? You're the ones who planned without consulting me, expecting me to be happy to sacrifice a whole week. Isn't that selfish?" "That's enough. I'll get your father to call you. You'll listen to him." Before the call ended, Rebecca declared, "If I'm expected to babysit, I won't be coming home for Christmas." It was unclear if her words reached her mother. That night, Rebecca felt restless in her apartment. Her phone rang continuously with calls from her parents, all of which she sent to voicemail. There was also a short text from her Uncle Richard. "Rebecca, won't you think about the family?" She smirked with disdain. "In my family, thinking about the family always meant sacrificing myself to fulfill the wishes of others." Sitting on the sofa, Rebecca called her friend Gina. She was well aware of Rebecca's family situation. "So, are they trying to make you babysit again?" Gina asked immediately after answering the phone. This time it's different. I said no. I don't have to go along with what they decide on their own. Good for you. You've always been too accommodating to them. You have the right to have time for yourself. But it seems they haven't given up yet, Rebecca sighed. My dad keeps calling. Don't answer, Gina advised. Your answer isn't going to change, right? They're just trying to change your mind. Thank you. I'm not wrong, am I? Absolutely not, Gina asserted. You're an adult. You have the right to have your decisions respected. After hanging up, Rebecca boldly answered a call from her father. Dad, my answer hasn't changed, she stated without preamble. Rebecca, James's voice was calm. We just want you to show some compassion for the family. Me, lacking compassion? You guys don't respect my time or plans. All right, let's spend this year apart then. But could you come just for Christmas morning? The kids really want to see you. Rebecca was skeptical, but her father's proposal sounded reasonable. All right, I'll come for Christmas morning only. But stop asking me to babysit. I promise. Thank you, Rebecca. After hanging up, Rebecca was slightly uneasy. It felt unnatural how easily her father had acquiesced. However, she was satisfied that she had made her boundaries clear. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, Rebecca kept contact with her family to a minimum. Only occasional text messages came through, and there was no more talk of babysitting. She was relieved, yet couldn't shake the suspicion that something was off. On Christmas Eve, before going to bed late, she texted her parents. I'll arrive around 11 tomorrow morning. Merry Christmas. The reply came quickly. It was from her mother. Understood, Rebecca. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Rebecca smiled. Her relationship with her family had been complicated for a long time, but she was ready to reconcile in the spirit of Christmas, while still maintaining her boundaries. The next morning, Rebecca woke up early, carefully wrapped the presents, and loaded them into her car. She had chosen the gifts for the children with special care. For Nicole, a set of the latest young adult novels; for Chris, a Lego set; and for Alex, the stuffed animal he had wanted. On the way to her parents' house, Rebecca felt calm. Christmas songs played on the radio, and she hummed along. Today will be a good day. A short visit, see everyone, hand out the presents, and then back to my own time. However, when she parked in front of her parents' house, something felt off. There was no sign of her parents' car, Aunt Sandra's, or Uncle Richard's. The house lights were on, but it lacked the usual Christmas buzz. Rebecca frowned as she approached the front door with the presents. The doorbell rang, and she heard little footsteps running. The door opened, and Nicole appeared. Rebecca, she exclaimed joyfully. You came. Of course, Rebecca smiled and hugged her. Merry Christmas, Nicole. Where is everyone? They all went out, Nicole answered innocently. Mom and Dad and the others went on a trip. You are going to take care of us, right? Rebecca froze. What did you say? Rebecca. Chris and Alex ran up and hugged her. Did you bring presents? Rebecca tried to smile at the children, but inside she was trembling with anger. Yes, of course. Let's bring these into the living room first. As she led the children to the living room, Rebecca looked around. The house was neatly decorated and presents were stacked under the Christmas tree. On the table, there were leftovers from breakfast and a note. While the children were engrossed in their presents, Rebecca picked up the note. To Rebecca, we left on the 9 a.m. flight. We prepared breakfast for the children. There is a week's worth of meals in the fridge. Please follow the instructions. Emergency contact numbers are also on the fridge. Put Alex to bed by 7 p.m. Nicole and Chris should go to bed at 8:30 p.m. With love, Mom. They had ignored Rebecca's clear refusal and tricked her into taking care of the children. The children innocently opened their presents, cheering. Rebecca knew it wasn't their fault. Her anger should be directed at her parents and her aunt and uncle. I need to make a call. I'll be right back." She went to the kitchen and called her mother's cell phone. After several rings, her mother finally answered. "Oh, Rebecca. Have you arrived? How are the kids? What were you thinking?" Rebecca couldn't contain her anger. "How could you do something so underhanded after I clearly said no?" "Rebecca, calm down," Debbie said soothingly. "We knew you would come. You're a responsible person. I'm not your babysitter. I only said I'd come for Christmas morning. I never agreed to take care of the kids for a whole week. But you're there, aren't you? You can't just leave now. The kids are relying on you. This is clearly child neglect." Rebecca's voice turned cold. "Do you know what would happen if I called the police?" There was a gasp from the other end of the line. "You wouldn't do that, would you? Want to try me? If you're not back soon, the next call I make will be to the police." "Wait." Debbie panicked. "We're still at the airport. The flight hasn't left yet. Then cancel it and come back. I'm staying here for 1 more hour. If you're not back by then, I'm taking the kids to the police station." "Rebecca, please." 1 hour, Rebecca repeated and hung up. With her heart pounding, Rebecca returned to the children. "Hey everyone, your dad and the others will be back soon. Why don't we have some fun until then?" The children eagerly agreed. Rebecca played board games with them, read Christmas stories, and ate cookies. She made sure not to let her anger show to the children. 45 minutes had passed since her ultimatum. She was contemplating whether she should really call the police. But it turned out to be unnecessary. 50 minutes later, she heard cars approaching, and from the window, Rebecca saw her parents' car and the cars of Aunt Sandra and Uncle Richard arrive. "Look, everyone's back." The children ran excitedly to the door. She grabbed her bag and watched as the children reunited with my parents and aunt and uncle. "Rebecca." Debbie approached her. "I don't need an explanation. I'm leaving." "But it's Christmas," Debbie pleaded. "Let's spend time as a family." "Family? Now I know what you think of me. Just a convenient tool. Don't use me ever again." She said goodbye to the children and quietly left through the back door. Before getting into her car, she noticed yelling coming from inside the house. It was James scolding Debbie and Sandra. Rebecca took a deep breath and drove off. Her heart was a mix of anger and sadness, but she also felt a strange sense of liberation. She had finally stood up for herself. The day after Christmas, Rebecca spent a quiet morning in her apartment. She responded promptly to messages from friends, but did not reply to any from her family. After the events of the previous day, she wanted to keep her distance. However, in the afternoon, while casually checking Facebook, her heart clenched with anger. Her mother, Debbie, had posted, "It was a sad Christmas. It hurts to know someone doesn't care about their own family." The children were disappointed, and the plans were ruined. "I never thought our family bond could be so fragile." The post had many comments. "What a pity, Debbie. The younger generation lacks responsibility. They can't even think about the children. Family is the most important thing. It's sad when someone doesn't understand that." Trembling, Rebecca took screenshots. Her mother had not named her explicitly, but it was clear the post was about her, and it completely twisted the truth. Driven by anger, Rebecca composed a lengthy post on her own Facebook page. "It's time to set the record straight. Yesterday, I visited my family home for Christmas. However, upon arrival, my parents, aunt, and uncle had already left for vacation, expecting me to take care of 3 children for 1 week. This was despite my explicit refusal. I threatened to report them for child neglect, and they reluctantly returned. I have been accused of not caring about my family. In reality, it is they who do not respect my time and choices. I am neither their toy nor a free babysitter available at their convenience. Family is about mutual respect. One-sided demands and manipulation do not qualify as such. Publishing this might irreparably damage her relationship with her family. But she felt a need to speak the truth. With trembling fingers, she pressed post. The reactions were immediate. First, Gina commented, "You did the right thing." Then, messages of support from other friends followed. Surprisingly, responses from her family also began to arrive. The first reply came from her grandfather, Frank. "Rebecca, can you call me? We need to talk." Shortly after, her grandmother Barbara commented, "Debbie, James, Sandra, Richard. I am disappointed in you all. You should apologize to Rebecca." Knowing that her respected grandparents were on her side provided Rebecca with some relief. She quickly called her grandfather. "Rebecca," his voice was warm. "That was rough." "Yes, Grandpa. It was really awful. I've spoken to Debbie. Her actions are inexcusable, as are James's. Sandra and Richard are also equally to blame. Everyone's blaming me. Like I'm the villain. They are wrong," her grandfather stated firmly. "You only protected your rights as an adult." Their actions were also irresponsible towards the children. "I don't know what to do. Keep your distance for now. They need time to reflect. Your grandmother and I will handle things appropriately with them." Rebecca thanked her grandfather for his support and hung up. However, her relief didn't last long. That night, her social media overflowed with criticism from her family. Debbie accused Rebecca of shamelessly airing family issues in public. James advised Rebecca to grow up. Sandra and Richard blamed her for betraying the family. Then, a wave of critical comments from other cousins, aunts, and uncles followed. At the same time, Rebecca's post unexpectedly spread further. Not only her Facebook friends but also their friends shared it, and many people sympathized with her situation. "I've had similar experiences. Just because they're family doesn't mean you have to continue a disrespectful relationship, and you acted correctly," were among the hundreds of supportive comments she received. All night, Rebecca's smartphone kept buzzing with notifications. Eventually, she turned it off and went to sleep. The next morning, she was woken up by a call from Gina. "Rebecca, things have blown up. Your post is being shared everywhere. Some blogs have picked up your story." "What?" Rebecca rubbed the sleep from her eyes and quickly turned on her phone. Notifications flooded in, and she was overwhelmed. Her post had been shared thousands of times, and many people shared their similar experiences. Several online news sites even picked up her story, discussing family boundaries. She had wished to remain anonymous, but the situation had spiraled beyond her control. "I didn't intend for this. But a lot of people are resonating with you," Gina said. "The experience you shared is something many have silently endured." That afternoon, another shocking development occurred. Her mother Debbie posted anew. "I need to clarify the situation. My previous post was emotional. My husband, my brother-in-law, and I had unfair expectations of our daughter Rebecca. We did not respect her wishes and tried to use her as a free babysitter. Her reaction was completely justified. Henceforth, I publicly apologize here." Rebecca was astounded. Her mother apologizing publicly was unthinkable. But the reason soon became clear. Rebecca received a text message from her grandfather. "Debbie and I spoke. Their behavior was shameful. Your parents, Aunt Sandra, and Uncle Richard have agreed to publicly apologize to you, Rebecca. However, I feel that this is not enough. They have been using you for a long time. I think we should consider taking this matter to a legal standpoint." Rebecca frowned. A legal standpoint? She thought that might be going too far. However, her opinion quickly changed. That night, Rebecca continued to ignore calls from her mother but decided to open an email from her father. The contents infuriated her. "Rebecca, we have apologized publicly. But you also need to reconsider your actions. Threatening to call the police for child neglect is excessive. We just wanted you to look after the children for a few days. Your overreaction has embarrassed the entire family. I will no longer allow you to attend family gatherings, Dad." After reading this email, Rebecca's anger reached its peak. They had apologized superficially, but in reality, they continued to blame her and even tried to exclude her from the family. She immediately called her grandfather. "Grandpa, Dad just sent me this email." Her grandfather was visibly angry upon hearing about the email. "This is unacceptable. They haven't learned anything. Rebecca, you should consult with a lawyer. This is harassment." Encouraged by her grandfather's advice, Rebecca met with a family law attorney the next day. The lawyer listened carefully to her situation and pointed out that the issues were more serious than Rebecca had initially thought. "Mizu Manning, this isn't just a simple family dispute," attorney Vanessa Gale said. "The behavior of your parents and aunt and uncle can be considered psychological harassment. Especially, the defamation on social media against you could potentially be libelous." "Should I really sue?" Rebecca asked. "Let's start by sending them a warning letter. We'll notify them that if they continue this harassment, legal action will be taken." Rebecca agreed, and the lawyer sent a formal warning to her parents, Aunt Sandra, and Uncle Richard. However, this action further escalated the situation. After receiving the warning letter, Debbie became even more aggressive. She posted on social media that Rebecca was an ungrateful daughter trying to sue her family. James described Rebecca as emotionally unstable and stated that her claims were exaggerated. Sandra and Richard joined in, criticizing Rebecca for always seeking attention and claiming her story was a complete fabrication. These posts were the last straw for Rebecca. She consulted with her lawyer again and decided to file a lawsuit for defamation and emotional distress. "Mizu Manning, I understand this decision isn't easy," Attorney Gale said kindly, "but it's necessary to protect you." On the day the lawsuit was filed, Rebecca was overwhelmed with mixed emotions. She loved her family, but their actions were unforgivable. This was not just a one-time event, but a pattern of exploitation and lack of respect that had gone on for years. Her grandparents fully supported Rebecca's decision. They even offered to testify on her behalf in court. Nicole, Chris, and Alex were too young to fully understand the situation, but Rebecca continued to communicate with them, showing her love. The legal proceedings lasted for months. During this time, Rebecca's family relationships completely fractured. Her parents, Aunt Sandra and Uncle Richard cut off contact with her, while the rest of the family was forced to take sides. Many relatives sided with her parents due to family unity, but her grandparents and a few cousins supported Rebecca. The trial progressed more quickly than expected. Rebecca's lawyer clearly presented the long-term pattern, the Christmas incident, and the subsequent harassment on social media. The testimony of her grandparents was particularly effective, as they detailed the history of how Rebecca had been treated within the family. The most shocking evidence was the screenshots of social media posts by Debbie, James, Sandra, and Richard, and records of the insulting messages they had sent to Rebecca. These clearly demonstrated malicious harassment. The judge ultimately recognized Rebecca's claims, issuing a restraining order against her parents and aunt and uncle, and awarded significant damages for defamation and emotional distress. Furthermore, they were ordered to retract their false online statements about Rebecca and post an official apology. The court finds that the actions of Debbie Manning, James Manning, Sandra Miller, and Richard Miller constituted clear harassment of Rebecca Manning and caused severe emotional distress, the judge stated sternly. Family relationships should be based on mutual respect, and the defendant's actions have violated this fundamental principle. As she left the courtroom, Rebecca felt a complex mix of emotions. She had won her case and successfully defended her boundaries, but she also felt sorrow for possibly losing part of her family forever. "You did the right thing," her grandfather said as he hugged her. "Time may heal some things, but you always have the right to know your worth and protect your dignity." Several weeks after the verdict, the lives of Rebecca's parents and aunt and uncle changed drastically. The trial was covered by the media, severely damaging their reputation in the community. James lost the trust of his colleagues and was pushed into early retirement from the company where he had worked for 35 years. Debbie was asked to resign from her position in the PTA and completely lost her standing in the community she belonged to. The couple became socially isolated and began living a life far from their previous luxuries. The small store run by Sandra and Richard saw a decline in customers, and they began facing financial difficulties. The poor reputation from social media spilled over into the offline world, and one by one, their regular customers left. Within 6 months, they were forced to close the store. They fell behind on their mortgage and eventually had to move to a cheaper apartment in the suburbs. Rebecca maintained a careful relationship with her grandparents and the children, but had no contact with her parents or aunt and uncle. When Nicole turned 18, she left her parents' house and moved in with Rebecca. Chris and Alex gradually began to distance themselves from their parents as well. Their care, it seemed, had been left to outside babysitters since Rebecca left. 10 years later, Rebecca had a successful career and was surrounded by her true family, her husband and daughter she had chosen herself. She had gained her freedom for the first time by breaking away from her biological family. Occasionally, the pain of the past would hit her, but each time, she reassured herself that her choices were right. "I have no place in my life for those who treated me like a tool," she told her therapist. "It might sound harsh, but it was necessary to protect myself." The wounds inflicted by her family never fully healed, but Rebecca continued to walk her path with pride. The fate of her parents and her aunt and uncle served as a harsh lesson to those who continuously exploit others. "I never expected to hear my mother dismiss my entire existence with a single phrase, but there it was, floating through the kitchen doorway like poison gas while I stood frozen, dish towel in hand, barely breathing. 'Oh, don't worry about Maya,' my mother said into her phone, her voice dripping with that sugary tone she reserved for important conversations. 'She's just someone we hired to help around here. We need to focus on Clara's violin recital. It could be her big break.' My name is Maya, and at 22, I'd spent most of my life being my family's backbone while simultaneously being treated like their shadow. The eldest of 5 sisters, I'd changed more diapers than my mother and cooked more meals than I could count. But hearing my presence reduced to just someone we hired to help, that was new, that was different. I gripped the kitchen counter, my knuckles turning white. Through the doorway, I could see my mother pacing in her designer heels, gesturing animatedly as she discussed my 10-year-old sister's upcoming performance. Clara, the golden child, the one who got private lessons while I worked part-time jobs to help pay our bills. The dress alone is costing a fortune, Mother continued. But Robert says it's worth every penny. You should see how she lights up on stage, Evelyn. She's going to be somebody special. Unlike me, apparently. The sound of violin scales drifted down from upstairs, Clara practicing as always. The notes felt like tiny needles in my skin now. I'd given up my own piano lessons at 12 so Clara could start hers. "You're the big sister," Mother had said then. "You understand, don't you?" I'd understood too much for too long. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably another text from Olivia or Sophia, my younger sisters, asking when dinner would be ready. They were old enough to know better, but young enough to still follow the family pattern. At 16 and 14, they lived in the space between Clara's spotlight and my shadows. "Of course we'll need photos." Mother laughed into the phone. Professional ones? Naturally. We can't have anything less for our little star. I thought about the stack of college brochures hidden under my mattress, the ones I'd been secretly collecting. The acceptance letter from State University that arrived yesterday buried at the bottom of my sock drawer. The small savings account I'd built up over years of babysitting and weekend jobs, unknown to my parents. My father's heavy footsteps sounded on the front porch, home early from work, probably to take Clara to her practice session. I had about 30 seconds before he'd walk in expecting dinner to be ready. That's when I made my decision. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I'd never dared to call before. My grandmother Eleanor's contact info, given to me years ago by my aunt at a family funeral. My mother had cut ties with her own mother long ago for reasons she never discussed. My fingers trembled as I typed. "Hi, Grandma Eleanor, this is Maya. I know we've never met, but I need someone to talk to, someone who might understand." The kitchen timer beeped, reminding me about the casserole in the oven. Father's keys jingled when he was trying to unlock the door. Upstairs, Clara hit a wrong note and started the scale again. I hit send. Then I straightened my spine, pulled on my oven mitts, and prepared to serve another perfect family dinner. Maybe one of my last, because in that moment I knew I wasn't just someone they hired for help, and soon they'd all understand exactly what that meant. My phone vibrated almost immediately with a response, but I couldn't check it yet. I had to get through this dinner first, to keep playing my part. But for the first time in years, I felt something dangerous and wonderful unfurling in my chest. Hope. Grandma Eleanor's response changed everything. After 3 days of secret text messages and late-night calls, she invited me to meet her at a small cafe downtown. I told my mother I was picking up extra hours at work, a lie she barely acknowledged while helping Clara practice her scales. The cafe was quiet when I walked in, just a few morning stragglers nursing their coffees. And there she was, my grandmother, sitting straight-backed in a corner booth, elegant in a deep blue blazer. She looked nothing like the villain my mother had painted her as over the years. "Maya," she said, standing to embrace me. Her perfume reminded me of gardenias. "You look just like my mother, except for your age." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Eleanor's smile turned wistful. "Ah, so we're jumping right in. Good. I always preferred honest conversations." She gestured for me to sit. "Tell me about the acceptance letter." I nearly knocked over my water glass. "How did you?" "I made some calls to State University after your first message. I still have friends on the board." She stirred her tea with precise movements. "Full scholarship offer. But you haven't told your parents yet, have you?" Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "Where are you?" Mom's freaking out. Clara's dress fitting got moved up. "Let me guess," Eleanor said, watching my face. "Family emergency." I showed her the text. Another one came through. "She's threatening to take away Clara's violin time if you don't show up." Classic Marjorie. Eleanor murmured, using one child to control another. "I should go," I said while grabbing for my purse. "I can't let Clara lose her practice time. She has that recital coming up." "Sit down, Maya." Eleanor's voice was gentle but firm. "Let's talk about what you want for once." My phone kept buzzing. I turned it face down on the table. "I can help you," she continued. "Not just with college. I can help you build a life that's yours." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you, a trust fund I set up when you were born. Your mother never knew about it." My hands shook as I opened it. The number on the statement made my vision blur. "But why?" "Because I saw this coming," she said simply. "I saw how Marjorie was already playing favorites with you girls. History repeating itself." She took a sip of tea. "She did the same thing to your Aunt Catherine before cutting me out of her life." I had an aunt? Mother had never mentioned a sister. The cafe door chimed. I looked up and froze. Olivia stood there, her art portfolio clutched to her chest, eyes wide with recognition. "I followed you." She blurted out, I'm sorry, but I knew something was going on. And she looked at Eleanor. You're our grandmother. Eleanor's face softened. Hello, Olivia. Your artwork is extraordinary, by the way. I saw your piece in the youth gallery downtown last month. Olivia's cheeks flushed. You saw that? Mom and Dad didn't even go to the opening. Of course they didn't. I muttered. My phone buzzed again. Mother this time. Your selfishness is ruining Clara's big day. Come home now. Olivia read the message over my shoulder and squared her shoulders. I'm staying here with you and Grandma Eleanor. Something shifted in my chest. Pride, maybe, or relief. I wasn't alone anymore. Eleanor smiled at us both. Well then, shall we order some real breakfast and talk about your futures? Both of them. As we settled into talk, I felt the weight of years of obligation starting to crack, but beneath that weight was something stronger. The foundation of a new kind of family, built on choice rather than duty. My phone kept buzzing, but for the first time in my life, I let it ring. I knew the moment I walked into our house that everything was about to explode. The acceptance letter from State University sat on the kitchen counter, torn open. Mother stood by the window, her back rigid, while Father's face had that dangerous stillness I'd learned to fear over the years. When were you planning to tell us? Mother's voice was eerily calm. I set my bag down slowly, buying time. I was waiting for the right moment. The right moment. Father picked up the letter. Like after you'd already abandoned your family? After you'd betrayed everything we've sacrificed for you. Sacrificed. The word tasted bitter. What exactly have you sacrificed for me? A sharp intake of breath from the doorway made me turn. Clara stood there in her new recital dress, watching with those calculating eyes that made her seem far older than 10. You're leaving? She asked, her voice trembling perfectly. But my big performance? You promised to help me practice. Don't worry, sweetheart. Mother rushed to comfort her. Maya's not going anywhere. She understands her responsibilities. My responsibilities? Something snapped inside me. I felt like staff that weren't being paid properly. Like giving up every dream I'd ever had so Clara could have her moment in the spotlight. That's enough. Father's fist came down on the counter. You will not speak about your sister that way. Why not? Because she's the only one who matters. I pulled out my phone, fingers shaking as I pulled up the recording from that day. Mother's voice filled the kitchen. She's just someone we hired to help around here. The color drained from Mother's face. You recorded me. I didn't have to. It's burned into my memory. I turned to Clara. Just like I remember giving up my piano lessons for you, my art classes, my summer camp money. Everything. Clara's lower lip quivered, her signature move when she wanted attention. But before she could speak, Olivia appeared behind her. She's right, Olivia said quietly. We all know it's true, Mother. Olivia, go to your room. This doesn't concern you. Actually, it concerns all of us. Sophia stepped out from behind Olivia. And we're tired of pretending it doesn't. Father's face darkened. This is about that woman, isn't it? Your grandmother's been filling your head with nonsense. Grandma Eleanor told me the truth. I shot back. About Aunt Catherine. About why you cut her out, Mother. About how you did the same thing to your sister that you're doing to me. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Clara stopped her performance, looking confused. You have no right, Mother whispered. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I pulled out the trust fund papers from my bag. And I'm not asking for permission anymore. I'm going to college. I'm building my own life. If you walk out that door, Father's voice was dangerously low. Don't expect to come back. I looked at my sisters. Olivia's determined face, Sophia's quiet support, and Clara's calculating stare. I'm not abandoning them, I said. Unlike you, I know what family really means. You ungrateful. Mother started, but I cut her off. I'm grateful, actually. You've taught me exactly what kind of parent I never want to be. I grabbed my pre-packed bag from behind the couch. I'd known this moment was coming, and headed for the door. Olivia and Sophia moved to follow me, but I shook my head slightly. They needed to stay, for now. We had a plan. Maya, Clara called out, her voice suddenly stripped of its usual manipulation. For a moment she sounded genuinely scared. Don't go. I paused at the door, looking back at my youngest sister. When you're ready to be real with me, Clara, you know how to reach me. Until then, enjoy your spotlight. The door closed behind me with a quiet click, but it might as well have been a thunderclap. As I walked to the car where Grandma Eleanor waited, I could hear Mother's sobs and Father's angry voice, but for the first time in my life, those sounds didn't control me. I was finally writing my own story. College should have felt like freedom. Instead, my dorm room walls seemed to close in a little more each day. 3 months into my first semester, and the silence from home was deafening, broken only by secret late-night calls with Olivia and Sophia. They've hired a new housekeeper. Olivia whispered during one such call. Mother keeps introducing her as part of the family. You should see the way she looks at your old photos when she says it. I pressed my forehead against the cool window glass, watching students cross the quad below. And Clara's still playing the perfect daughter, but Olivia hesitated. Something's different. She keeps asking about you when Mother and Father aren't around. A knock at my door made me jump. I have to go, I whispered, ending the call. It was my roommate, Katie, holding up 2 coffee cups like peace offerings. Your grandmother's downstairs. I hadn't expected Eleanor today. When I reached the lobby, she was examining the bulletin board with a frown. These student activities are dreadfully dull, she said by way of greeting. Get your coat. We're having lunch off campus at that restaurant. She waited until our food arrived before dropping her bomb. Your mother came to see me yesterday. My fork clattered against the plate. What? What did she want? To know if I was funding your education. Eleanor's eyes were sharp. She's been asking questions about your Aunt Catherine too. Did you tell her anything she doesn't already know deep down? Eleanor sipped her water. But that's not why I'm here. Your sister Sophia called me this morning. My heart stopped. Is she okay? Fine. But Clara's violin recital is next week. The one you helped her prepare for, before. She let the words hang. Before I abandoned them. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Before you chose yourself. Eleanor corrected. But now Clara's refusing to perform. Says, it doesn't feel right without you there. I laughed harshly. Another manipulation. She's probably just nervous. And she's been sleeping in your bed. Eleanor's words cut through my defenses. Sophia found her there last night, clutching your old music books. The image hit me like a physical blow. I remembered finding Clara doing the same thing after our Aunt Catherine had left, though I hadn't known then who Catherine was or why she disappeared. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know I'm supposed to hate you now, but I keep messing up the middle section, and you're the only one who knows how to fix it. See, she's just a child, Eleanor said softly. A child who's realizing that being the favorite comes with its own kind of prison. Don't. I stood up abruptly. Don't make me feel guilty for finally breaking free. Guilt. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. No, dear, I'm suggesting you have power now, real power. The question is, what will you do with it? Another text came through, this time from Olivia. Mother's talking about sending Clara to boarding school if she doesn't snap out of it. Please help. The familiar urge to rescue, to fix everything, rose up in my chest, but underneath it was something new. A realization that helping didn't have to mean surrendering. I need to think, I told Eleanor. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Just remember, revenge might feel good, but liberation is better. For everyone. Back in my dorm room, I stared at Clara's text for a long time before finally responding. The middle section isn't the problem. You're playing it perfectly, but perfect isn't the same as real. Then I opened my laptop and bought a ticket to the recital. Not because they needed me, but because I needed to prove to myself, most of all, that I could walk back into that house on my own terms. This time I wouldn't be the help, I'd be the hurricane. Clara's recital was in full swing when I slipped into the back of the auditorium. She sat at the grand violin, her white dress gleaming under the spotlight, but something was off. Her usually perfect posture was rigid, her movements mechanical. Then I saw why. Mother stood in the wings, mouthing along to every note, conducting our sister's performance like a puppet master. I hadn't planned to come backstage afterward, but Olivia grabbed my arm during the applause. This way. She led me through the familiar hallways of the music school where I'd spent countless hours practicing with Clara. Voices echoed from the green room, Mother's shrill tone cutting through the walls. That was sloppy, Clara. What happened to the middle section? We practiced it 100 times. I'm sorry, Sorry doesn't win competitions. Sorry doesn't get you into the Juilliard Youth Program. Do you want to end up like Maya? I stepped into the doorway, Olivia close behind. Like me? You mean independent? College educated. Mother spun around, her face draining of color. Clara sat on the violin bench, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. You have no right to be here, Mother hissed. Actually, I do. I pulled out my old student ID. I still teach here part-time. Helps pay for college. Clara's head snapped up, her eyes wide. Before anyone could speak, a man in an expensive suit appeared behind me. Miss Harrington? I'm Miles Donovan from the Juilliard Selection Committee. I was hoping to discuss your sister's performance. Mother's expression shifted instantly to her society smile. Of course, Clara would be honored. Actually, Miles cut in smoothly. I was hoping to speak with Maya. Your teaching reputation precedes you. The silence that followed was delicious. I felt Mother's world tilting as Miles continued. Several of your students have been accepted to our program. Your methods are unconventional, but effective. She's not Clara's teacher. Mother snapped. She's nobody. That's where you're wrong. Olivia stepped forward. Maya's been teaching Clara for months, through video calls, late at night. Why do you think she suddenly started playing with actual emotion instead of just technical precision? Mother turned to Clara, who seemed to shrink further into herself. Is this true? Before Clara could answer, Miles spoke again. Mrs. Harrington, we look not just for technical perfection. We want students who understand music, who feel it, like your daughter demonstrated today, in the middle section particularly. I caught Clara's eye, seeing the ghost of a smile at our private joke about that middle section. But Mother wasn't finished. This is ridiculous. Maya abandoned this family. She has no right to interfere with Clara's future. Actually, a new voice joined in, Grandmother Eleanor, elegant as ever in her signature blue. Maya has every right, especially since she's just been appointed to our family's seat on the music school's board of directors. Mother's face went from white to red. You can't. I can, and I did. Eleanor's voice was steel wrapped in silk. It's time for changes, Marjorie, starting with how we define family. Clara suddenly stood up, her small hands balled into fists. I don't want to go to Juilliard. The room froze. I don't want to play violin anymore. Not like this. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. I want to be real, like you said. Mother reached for her, but Clara stepped back, closer to me. The movement was small, but its meaning was seismic. Well, Miles said into the tension, I think I have what I need. He handed me his card. Call my office on Monday. We should discuss your teaching methods further. As he left, I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. This wasn't the revenge I'd imagined. It was something more powerful. The truth, finally breaking through years of carefully maintained facades. Mother stood there, her perfect world crumbling, while Clara reached for my hand. The hurricane had arrived, but it wasn't destroying everything in its path. It was clearing the air. The wedding invitations sat on my desk like ticking bombs. 6 cream-colored envelopes, each addressed in the calligraphy grandmother Eleanor had insisted upon. My hand shook as I reached for the one marked, "Mr. and Mrs. Robert Harrington." "You don't have to send them," Miles said from the doorway of our apartment. "No one would blame you." I sealed the envelope instead of answering. 3 years had passed since Clara's recital, since everything changed. Or maybe nothing had changed at all. My phone buzzed. Olivia's daily update. "Mother's redecorating your old room again. Says it needs to be perfect for when you come to your senses." Another text followed. "Clara asked if she could be your flower girl. Mother threw a fit." The doorbell rang before I could respond. Eleanor stood there, looking unusually pale. "We need to talk." She didn't wait for an invitation, walking straight to my kitchen table. "Your mother came to see me yesterday. About the wedding." My stomach dropped. What did she want? To negotiate. Eleanor's voice was careful. "She's willing to attend, to bring the whole family, on one condition, of course." "Of course there's a condition." I laughed bitterly. "What is it?" "That I resign from the music school board? Give up my teaching position? Let Clara resume her path to Juilliard." The room spun slightly. "After 3 years? Clara doesn't even play anymore." "She does now. Your mother's been forcing her to practice again. Says it's time to fix the damage you caused." My phone buzzed again. At least this time, it was Sophia. "Clara locked herself in the bathroom. Won't stop crying. What do we do?" Miles touched my shoulder. "Maya, maybe we should postpone." "No." I stood up abruptly. "I won't let them hijack this too. They're either coming as family or not at all. There's more." Eleanor said quietly, "Your father. He's sick. Heart problems. Your mother says this might be his last chance to see you married." The manipulation was so obvious it should have been laughable. Instead, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. My phone rang. Clara's number. I hadn't heard her voice in months. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Please," she whispered. "Please just do what they want. I can't take it anymore. I'll play whatever they want, be whatever they want, just make it stop." Her voice breaking, she continued. "They're destroying everything you built, Maya. The scholarship program for underprivileged students, the community concerts. Mother's using father's condition to pressure the board. They're voting next week to reverse everything." I looked at the wedding invitations, at Miles's worried face, at Eleanor's knowing eyes. 3 years of building something real, something that helped people, and Mother was systematically dismantling it all. "What would you do?" I asked Eleanor. She smiled sadly. "I already did it, dear. 30 years ago, I chose freedom over family. I'm still not sure if it was worth the cost." My phone buzzed again. A photo from Olivia. Clara at the violin. Her face blank, Mother standing over her with that familiar controlling smile. Behind them, barely visible, was Father in his armchair, looking thinner than I remembered. "The invitations go out tomorrow," I said finally, "as planned." "And the board position?" Eleanor asked. I reached for my laptop, pulled up my resignation letter. The one I'd drafted weeks ago, sensing this moment would come. One click, and I could end this. Buy peace for my sisters, maybe even reconciliation with my parents. Instead, I closed the laptop. Tell Mother she can come to the wedding or not. Her choice. But I'm done letting her choices control my life. As Eleanor left, another text came through from Clara. "I hate you for leaving me here, and I hate myself for wishing I was brave enough to do the same." I stared at the message until the screen went dark, reflecting my face, and behind it, the empty chairs where family should have been. The call came during my morning class. Grandmother Eleanor, gone in her sleep. "Peaceful," they said. As if that made it better, as if anything could make it better. I wasn't prepared for what waited at the lawyer's office. My entire family arranged like players on a chessboard. Mother and Father by the window, Olivia and Sophia huddled together on a leather couch, and Clara perched on the edge of a chair, watching me with those calculating eyes. now that we're all here. The lawyer began, but Mother cut him off. Is this really necessary? Surely any arrangements can be handled by immediate family. I am immediate family, I said quietly. More immediate than you've been for years. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mrs. Harrington, your mother was very specific about this meeting. Everyone must be present for the reading. He pulled out a thick envelope. The bulk of the estate goes to Maya. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Including control of the family's educational trust and music school board positions. He paused. With one condition, of course. There was a condition. There was always a condition. The inheritance is contingent upon Maya establishing a new scholarship program for siblings separated by family estrangement. Mother's laugh was brittle. How appropriate. There's more. The lawyer continued. A separate trust for Olivia and Sophia's education, and a letter for Clara. Clara's head snapped up. For me. He handed her an envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. This is impossible. Mother stood up. Eleanor had no right. She had every right. Father's voice was unexpectedly quiet. Just like Catherine did. The name hung in the air like smoke. Don't. Mother warned. Your sister made her choice. Father continued. Just like Maya did. Just like Sarah is trying to. Clara was still reading her letter, tears streaming down her face. She knew, Clara whispered. Grandma Eleanor knew everything. About the panic attacks before recitals. About practicing until my fingers bled, because it was never good enough. About wishing I could disappear. Like Maya did. Clara, that's enough. Mother started. No, it's not. Clara stood up, the letter clutched to her chest. She left me money too, but not for Juilliard. For therapy. The silence that followed was deafening. This ends now, I said, standing to face Mother. The manipulation, the control, the turning us against each other. It ends today. You have no right. I have every right. And now I have the power to back it up. I turned to my sisters. Olivia, Sophia, you're coming to live with me and Miles. We've already arranged transfers to schools near us. Mother went pale. You can't. Actually, she can. The lawyer interjected. The educational trust gives her full guardianship rights. And Clara. Mother's voice was dangerous now. I looked at my youngest sister, really looked at her. Behind the perfect posture and practiced smile, I saw what Eleanor must have seen. A scared child desperate to break free. That's her choice, I said softly. For once in her life, let it be her choice. Clara stood up slowly, her letter still clutched tight. She took one step toward Mother, then another toward me. Then she stopped exactly between us. I choose me, she whispered. I choose to get help. To figure out who I am without the violin, without the pressure. She looked at Mother. Without you telling me who I have to be. Mother grabbed her purse, heading for the door. You'll regret this, all of you. No, they won't, Father said, still in that quiet voice. He stood up, straightened his jacket, and did something I'd never seen before. He walked away from Mother, toward us. The lawyer smiled slightly. Shall we discuss the details of that scholarship program, Miss Harrington? I sat down, my sisters and father arranging themselves around me like a shield wall. Yes, I said, watching Mother's retreating back. Let's build something new. 1 year later, I stood in Grandmother Eleanor's garden, watching Clara cutting roses with careful precision. Her therapist had suggested gardening as an outlet, something to create that didn't require perfection. The irony wasn't lost on me. Do you ever miss it? I asked. The violin. She considered the question, pruning shears pausing mid-snip. Sometimes. But I miss the music, not the pressure. She looked up at me. I started writing songs instead. On guitar. Is that okay? You don't need my permission, Clara. I know, but I want your opinion, sister to sister. not teacher to student. Inside the house, I could hear Olivia and Sophia arguing over college applications. Father's voice drifted out, mediating their debate with the patience he'd finally found after leaving Mother. She'd moved to Boston last month, chasing some dream of starting over. None of us had heard from her since. Miles appeared on the porch, carrying a stack of manila envelopes. First batch of scholarship applications just came in. The Catherine Eleanor Harrington Scholarship for Family Reconciliation, grandmother's last gift, turning our pain into purpose. Already, we'd helped 3 sets of siblings reunite, rebuild, redefine what family meant. "Can I help review them?" Clara asked, setting down her shears. I think I might understand what they're going through. I studied my youngest sister, no longer the perfect porcelain doll Mother had crafted, but something far more valuable. A real person, with scars and strength all her own. "Actually," I said, "I was hoping you'd join the selection committee permanently. You and Olivia both." Her eyes widened. "Really? Really? And Sophia can take over the summer music program once she finishes high school, if she wants." "What about you?" Clara asked quietly. "I'm stepping back a bit. Miles and I are thinking about starting a family of our own." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with possibility and fear. Would I become like Mother? Would history repeat itself? Clara must have read my thoughts. "You're not her," she said firmly. "You never were." Inside, Olivia had started playing something on the old upright piano we'd rescued from storage. Not classical, but something. Something original, wild and free and imperfect. Sophia's voice joined in, followed by Father's surprised laugh. "I found Mother's diary," Clara said suddenly. "From when she was my age. She wanted to be a singer. Did you know that? But her parents said no, said it wasn't proper for a Harrington." I hadn't known that. It explained so much, yet changed nothing. "She sent me a text last week," Clara continued. "Asked if I'd come visit her in Boston. Just me." My hands clenched involuntarily. "What did you say?" I told her I'd think about it, but only if you came with me. She met my eyes. "We either heal together or not at all." Miles stepped off the porch, applications tucked under his arm. "First committee meeting starts in 10 minutes. You two ready?" I looked at my sister, really looked at her. At the dirt under her fingernails, the sun on her face, the quiet confidence that had replaced her desperate need to please. Then at the house behind us, filled with the messy, beautiful sound of family being redefined. "Almost," I said. "Clara, help me with one last rose bush. Grandma Eleanor always said gardens need both roots and new growth to thrive." She picked up her shears, a small smile playing at her lips. "Like families. Like families." Together we turned back to the garden, cutting away dead wood to make room for fresh blooms. Behind us, Olivia's music drifted through the open windows, carrying the sound of possibility on the summer breeze. Not an ending, exactly, more like a new beginning, rooted in truth instead of pretense, in love instead of obligation, in the kind of strength that comes from being broken and rebuilding together, just the way Grandma Eleanor would have wanted it.